chapter 2, the control of water activity, and we have done section 2.1 until 2.3 in the previous weeks. So in this video we're going to focus on section 2.4 until 2.6, where in 2.4 we talk about water activity and enzymatic reactions, followed by water activity and chemical deterioration of food, and prediction of water activity value in practical or industrial applications. So for the first one, water activity and enzymatic reaction, just a brief introduction on the role of enzymes, especially in food processing. As we know that enzymes are biological catalysts that are present in all living organisms, they play a crucial role in food processing by accelerating chemical reactions without themselves being consumed in the reactions. Enzymes are also highly specific, meaning it has a specific substrate to work on a particular reactions, and its enzyme targeting a particular substrate to catalyze a specific reaction, the reaction. In food processing, enzymes are utilized for various purposes such as improving texture, enhancing flavor, accelerating ripening process, as well as facilitating digestion. Enzymes are therefore an integral part to many food industries, including baking, brewing, dairy, and food processing. There are, of course, some factors influencing the efficiency of the enzymatic activity. One being the temperatures, where enzymes have an optimal temperature range for activity beyond which they will denature. The ideal temperature for enzyme is usually between 20 to 25 degrees C, where below this temperature they tend to become inactivated, and conversely at higher end at very high temperature such as 45 degrees C, the enzyme tend to get denatured or destroyed. It's worth mentioning that low molecular weight enzymes tend to be more heat stable than higher molecular weight enzymes, probably due to the higher surface to volume ratio, and these low molecular weight enzymes are easy to dissipate high temperatures, and therefore they tend to be more stable. The other factors is pH, where enzymes function optimally within specific pH range, typically between 6 to 8, and deviation can impair their activity, meaning if it is beyond or less than this optimum range, the enzyme activity will be affected. The other factor is substrate concentrations, where enzyme activity is typically proportional to substrate concentration until saturation occurs. In other words, if we are running out of a substrate, then the enzyme's velocity or kinetic is no longer linear or proportional. The other factors is inhibitors, the presence or absence of certain compounds that can inhibit or deactivate enzymes will impact their functionality. And therefore, understanding of these factors is essential for controlling enzyme reaction in food processing in order to achieve desired outcome. So how people control enzyme reaction in food preservation and for quality maintenance? Well, as we know that enzyme reaction can lead to undesirable changes in food quality and safety if left uncontrolled. Therefore, controlling this enzyme reaction is crucial for preserving the freshness, the nutritional value, and sensory attributes of our food products. This reaction includes enzymatic browning, lipid oxidation, and protein degradation are typically the common enzymatic reaction that can affect food quality negatively. Uncontrolled enzymatic reaction therefore can result in color changes, off flavors, texture deterioration, as well as nutrient loss. Effective control of enzymatic reactions can extend the shelf life of our foods, ensuring consumer satisfaction and reducing food waste. Strategies include temperature control, pH adjustment, enzyme inhibition, and water activity management. The next thing is we're going to talk about is the activity or water activity and the stability of the enzyme. So water activity or AW, A sub W, refers to the availability of water molecule for chemical reaction, for driving chemical reaction, as we know from the previous weeks. And this available water molecule also affect microbial growth in the food system. Enzyme stability is crucial for maintaining the functionality and efficiency of enzyme in food processing. Water activity therefore plays a very important role in modulating enzyme stability, affecting their conformation and activity. Denaturation of enzyme can happen or usually involve the alteration of 3D structure of enzyme, therefore leading to the loss of their catalytic activity. And this may result due to high water activity, which can promote enzyme denaturation by disrupting hydrogen bonds and hydrophobic interaction within the enzyme structures in the presence of higher amount of free water molecules. Denaturation of enzyme can also result in irreversible loss of functionality, rendering them ineffective in catalyzing the biochemical reactions. Factors such as temperature, pH, and presence of denaturing agent can exacerbate the denaturation process under high water activity conditions. Stabilization of this enzyme is therefore important in order to control and maintain food quality. Stabilization here refers to the preservation of the native conformation and functional integrity of our enzyme under varying environmental conditions during food processing. Low water activity environments can contribute to enzyme stabilization by minimizing water-mediated structural changes and preserving enzyme substrate interaction. There are some strategies for enzyme stabilization. These strategies include formulating food system with reduced water activity level through processes such as dehydration or addition of compatible solids. Secondly, utilize stabilizing agents such as salts, sugars, polyols to mitigate the effects of high water activity on enzyme stability. And thirdly, employing encapsulation techniques to protect enzyme from water-mediated denaturation and maintain their activity during processing and storage. In the following diagram, in this diagram, we can see the relation between water activity on the horizontal axis and the moisture content on the vertical axis. As you can see, water activity influences not only microbial spoilage but also chemical and enzymatic reactivity or reaction. Water activity may influence chemical reaction in different ways. It may act as a solvents or reactants or change the mobility of the reactants by affecting the viscosity of the system. Water activity influences non-enzymatic browning, lipid oxidation, degradation of vitamins and other nutrients, as well as enzymatic reaction, protein denaturation, and starch gelatinization. Typically, as the water activity level is lowered, as you can see from this graph, the rate of chemical degradation reaction decreases or reduces. Couple point worth noting here, as you know from the previous lectures, the higher the activity, let's say in the 0.9, these microbial such as yeast, bacteria, and molds start to grow, okay, even though the moisture content is actually low. Okay, and the more water activity, meaning the more free water molecule present, such as 0.95, 0.96, and then bacteria, you start to seeing bacteria to grow. And the other thing is enzyme activity, as you can see here, start to um, play a contribution at water activity around 0.6, let's say 0.6 onwards, whereas Browning reaction also approximately between water activity of 0.5 and 0.7 approximately, in which case after that the Browning reaction tend to decrease and followed by other enzyme activity beyond 0.7. And in water activity between 0.3 and 0.5 here, we tend to have loss of crispness of the food, powder caking, and collapse of food structure. Okay, just like before, this graph shows moisture absorption isotherms. On the x-axis here show the water activity level, but it doesn't display the legend. On the y-axis is the moisture content. So all enzyme catalyzed reaction can proceed in foods with relatively low water content. As you can see here in the circle, red circle here, the enzyme activity can actually be initiated at relatively low water activity value in this region, and then as the water activity increases, the rate of enzyme reaction increases exponentially. The rate of hydrolysis increases with increases water activity. Hydrolysis here meaning water activity, the presence of a high amount of water molecules. So the higher the water, the free water molecule, meaning the increase the water activity, the reaction being extremely slow at the very low water activities. At each water activity, there appears to be a maximum extent of hydrolysis, which also increases with water content. As shown here, for example, water activity increases but then decreases. There's a maximum here in the Browning reactions. Complete conversion of the substrate was observed for water activities greater than 0.75, so around here, which is quite high. Below water activity 0.75, the reaction continued to 100% hydrolysis, meaning free water molecule achieve 100% level. So this table simply summarize the water activity threshold, meaning the minimum value for various food products. Grain, for example, the hydrolytic enzyme involved is phytase in here, and temperature minimum or optimum, I think this is 23 degree, and the minimum water activity is 0.9. Okay, for flour, the enzyme involved is hydrolytic enzyme involved is amylase and protease. Okay, temperature can start at 30 degree, and the enzyme can work at 0.75 water activity. Notice this value here, it's quite low value water activity, 0.2, as you see in the previous graph. So in the wheat germ, glycoside hydrolase can actually start reactions at such a very dry environment here. So this is all for your reference. There are several other enzymes here, amylase, protease, lipase, and so on. We'll look some of these enzymes later on. So how exactly water activity influence the enzyme substrate interaction? Well, number one is due to the hydration effects. So water activity can significantly influence enzyme substrate interaction, particularly hydration effect. This hydration effect refers to the process of water molecules surrounding and interacting with the enzyme and the substrate molecule. So optimal hydration level are important for maintaining the enzyme structure and facilitating substrate binding. So optimal hydration here, meaning it doesn't mean the maximum hydration, but the hydration level is specific. Higher than this optimal value, the enzyme binding with the substrate may reduced, and then if it is less than the optimal range, then it also affecting the enzyme and substrate binding. That's why they use the word optimal here. On high water activity environment, as you can see in the previous graph, they tend to promote excessive, that obviously cause excessive hydration of enzyme active site, which is an important site on the protein molecule where the substrate binding, which lead to reduced enzyme substrate binding activity, meaning basically the water molecule basically occupies the active sites and therefore hinder the substrate from binding to the active sites. Conversely, at low water activity condition will result in insufficient hydration. It also means water molecule is away from the active site, impairing enzyme flexibility and substrate accessibility. Therefore, balancing the optimum hydration effect is important for optimizing enzyme activity and substrate specificity. This is an important word. Basically, enzyme only work with specific substrate in food processing or food processing application. Understanding the impact of water activity on hydration dynamics will provide insight into the regulation of enzyme reaction and product quality control. Water activity also affects enzyme substrate interaction through accessibility of the substrate molecule. In high water activity environments, water molecule can hinder or block substrate accessibility by promoting hydration of enzyme molecule and forming water barrier around the active site. This is what I mean by water molecule occupying the active site and block the binding of substrate. Excess hydration also impedes the interaction between enzyme and substrate, reducing enzyme substrate binding affinity. The word affinity here refers to the strength, the strength of binding between the enzyme and the substrate. The higher the binding, the higher the affinity, meaning the stronger the binding between enzyme and the substrate. Catalytic efficiency is referred to the catalytic capability. Enzyme main job is to catalyze a chemical reaction, biological reaction or chemical reaction. On the other hand, on the low water activity condition, as you can see in the previous graph, can promote substrate dehydration and facilitating substrate binding. Therefore, if there is no water molecule on the active site, then the substrate can bind on the enzyme, resulting in enzyme substrate interaction. Therefore, we need to know optimal water activity level that are good for maintaining the balance between hydration and substrate accessibility, and therefore maximizing enzyme activity and specificity. Understanding the influence of water activity on the substrate accessibility also provide insights into the regulation of enzyme reaction and the design of food processing strategies in order to enhance product quality and stability. Now we look at a couple of enzymes, the influence of water activity on specific enzyme in food system. The first one, lipase. As we know that lipase catalyze lipid hydrolysis, breaking down a large lipids molecule into its or fat molecule into its fatty acids constituents, components, as well as glycerol. Therefore, if we activate or the activity of lipase is higher, then the production of fatty acids and glycerol also higher. So high water activity level in lipid containing food can enhance lipase activity and therefore leading to the production of fatty acids and increase lipid degradation. And the problem is rancidity due to the higher amount of fatty acids. Rancid. Excessive water activity also accelerates lipid oxidation reactions, resulting in off flavor, meaning you don't have a good flavor, and basically also reduce shelf life of the product of the lipid rich food products due to the excessive water. So that's the reason why we tend to keep our food away from water, because of this reason, including this enzyme amylase that we know that it catalyzes the hydrolysis of starch molecule, in other words, large carbohydrate molecule, into simpler sugar components such as glucose and maltose. The presence of water activity or the higher water activity, it will influence amylase activity by modulating substrate hydration. In other words, controlling substrate hydration. The substrate here refer to the starch. So starch get hydrolyzed into its component glucose, simple sugar, and accessibility. So optimal water activity condition will promote amylase activity, enhancing starch breakdown and facilitating dough fermentation in baking processes. The last one, water activity also influence enzymes such as protease, that we know this protease is catalyze the hydrolysis of protein such as eggs, a lot of protein or egg, into its individual or into its peptide component. Peptide here refer to basically a smaller chain of amino acids, and amino acid is single molecule. So from large molecule of proteins into smaller peptide molecule containing a couple of amino acids, and then individual amino acid also present. Water activity affects proteases by influencing protein hydration and conformational changes. High water activity level can accelerate protease-mediated protein degradation, leading to texture deterioration and off-flavor in protein-rich foods. If you're making a cookie, if you have cookie containing a lot of protein due to the use of eggs, or any product, basically even meats, beef, etc., in the presence of protease and the enzyme, it may come from it may come from fruits like papain. Papain is a type of proteases from papaya. You mix that with your beef steak, your meat become more tender, because the papain protease can break down some of those protein in our beef and making it more tender. Okay, in this section we focus on water activity and chemical deteriorations of our foods products. Okay, deterioration of foods due to water activity. So what type of chemical deterioration that we have? One of them is lipid oxidation. As you can see here, there are other chemical deterioration such as enzymatic browning as well as protein degradation. But for lipid oxidation, it is a common chemical deterioration or degradation reaction in food, particularly in lipid-rich food products. So lipid oxidation involves reaction of the lipids with oxygen. That's why they call it oxidation. And this results in the formation of off-flavor, odors, and undesirable compounds. So basically, lipid oxidation is not a good thing if that happens in our foods. So this is due to the presence of oxygen. So this is the reason why in some situation we put our food in a tight packaging, airtight container, meaning that we try to restrict the amount of oxygen in our packaging, because we don't want lipid oxidation happening, because we don't want of flavor, of odors, undesirable compound to be present. Factors influencing lipid oxidation include temperature and obviously oxygen. Okay, obviously. light exposure. That's surprising. That's the reason why we put our food in sometime in aluminum packaging. We don't want light exposure, okay? Light to be our food to be to exposed with light, as well as the presence of pro-oxidant. I know it's quite strange because we used to hear antioxidant, but this time pro-oxidant, meaning it supports or it promotes the oxidation, yeah, due to the presence, for example, polyunsaturated fatty acids, meaning this is an example, okay? Poly mean plenty, okay, plenty of unsaturated fatty acid, unsaturated bond in here. So this is an example of pro-oxidants. So basically it will get oxidized, as you can see here in this diagram. Oxidation meaning loss of electrons, right? So the electron here in here actually lost, resulting in the formation of proton, as you can see here, and then the formation of free radical here, or yeah. Lipid oxidation can lead to reduced nutritional quality, texture changes, and shelf-life reduction in our food products. So basically, it's not a good thing to happen in our food. The other type of chemical deterioration is enzymatic browning. So this is also a type of chemical degradation, browning. So this browning is due to the action of enzyme, particularly polyphenols oxidase. As you can see, oxidase meaning it's an enzyme, yeah, that catalyze phenol. Yeah, poly means many, phenol is phenolic compounds. Peroxidase is also an enzyme on our phenolic compounds in our fruits and vegetables. So when the tissues are damaged, for example due to cutting or accidental damage, the enzyme of this one, polyphenol oxidase and peroxidase, come into contact with the substrate, which is the phenol, come from the fruit itself and the vegetables, and this contact result in leading to the formation of brown pigments such as melanin. So pigment is basically coloring, it's a pigment, yeah. It's like an organelle, but full of melanin, okay, resulting in brown color here, as you can see in the food on the left, okay, in cut up top. Factors influencing enzymatic browning include pH, temperature, oxygen availability, and enzyme substrate contact. Obviously, the contact of the enzyme, polyphenol oxidase, and the phenolic compound as the substrate. Enzymatic browning can result in color changes, as you can see there, flavor degradation, and reduced aesthetic appeal of the foods. So polyphenol oxidase enzyme catalyze conversion of phenolic substrate in our fruits and vegetables into quinones, which then further polymerize to form brown pigment, which is the brown color that you see in the previous pictures. Water activity influences enzymatic browning reaction by affecting the enzyme activity, the substrate availability, and reaction kinetics. So this come back to the how a water molecule causing the hydration effect, okay, as well as reaction kinetic. High water activity level in fruit and vegetable promote enzymatic browning reaction by enhancing enzyme substrate interactions and increasing the mobility of reactants, meaning the enzyme and the substrate. Conversely, on the other hand, low water activity, meaning the dry condition, can inhibit enzymatic browning by reducing enzyme activity and substrate solubility, and therefore slowing down the browning process. So that's one of the reasons why we keep our food and vegetables, our fruits and vegetables dry. We don't want to cause enzymatic browning. and also important is to avoid damage. Yeah? Otherwise, if the tissue is cut or exposed, then the enzyme and the substrate come into contact and causing the browning color, decoloration, color changes. The third chemical deterioration, the type of chemical degradation is protein degradation. So, protein degradation refers to the breakdown of protein molecule into smaller peptides and amino acids, okay, through various chemical reactions. Factors influencing protein degradation include temperature, pH, enzyme, and water activity as well. Protein degradation can occur through processes such as hydrolysis, oxidation, and Maillard reaction. As you can see here on the surface of this beef, okay, it's basically protein degradation, but it doesn't degrade the main meat below, only the protein on the surface, okay, turn into brown. That also produce a distinct color, and flavor, yeah, caramelized, that people usually call it, due to the contact or the interaction between sugar molecules and the proteins in the presence of high temperatures. That's what Maillard reaction is. So leading to changes in texture, as you can see, the texture changes. The flavor also actually quite nice, it's caramelized, and nutritional value, but not on the entire, only on the surface. Protein degradation can compromise the sensory attributes, nutritional quality, and functional food products, impacting consumer acceptance and the shelf life. Maillard reaction is a form of non-enzymatic browning, as you can see here. Typically proceed rapidly at 140-160 degrees C, which is a high temperature basically during grilling or cooking. So what's the role of water activity on protein stability? So beef is type of proteins. Water activity influences protein stability by modulating hydration dynamics and solvent interaction. Modulating meaning controlling hydration dynamics. If we reduce water activity, then we have a low or less hydration dynamics and solvent interaction. Optimal water activity level maintain protein hydration and stabilize protein structure by facilitating proper hydrogen bonding and hydrophobic interaction. High water activity environments can promote protein denaturation by disrupting the native protein structure, the native protein 3D structure, as you can see on the left, through excessive hydration. Similarly, low water activity condition can also lead to protein dehydration, reducing solubility and flexibility, and promoting aggregation, and finally denaturation. So besides predicting rates of various chemical enzymatic reaction, water activity also can affect textural properties of our foods. Food with high water activity tend to have a texture that described as moist, juicy, tender, and chewy. On the other hand, food with lower water activity often result in undesirable textural attributes such as hardness, dryness, staleness, and toughness. Low water activity products normally have texture attributes described as crisp or crunchy, while this product at higher water activity level change to soggy, which is also not good. Not good things to happen in our food if we have a soggy food. Critical water activity determine where products become unacceptable from a sensory standpoint. Controlling water activity in a powder, this is powder, maintains proper product structure, texture, stability, density, and rehydration properties. This graph is showing a mix of elements, if you like. Yeah, it's showing the previous same element as before, the enzyme activity, the mold, the yeast, bacteria, at a particular water activity here. the enzyme, but also the oxidation level here on this graph. Okay, so in other words, oxidation at very low water activity decreases, and then as the water activity increases, oxidation also increases exponentially from 0.3 onwards. Browning reaction, as you can see here, tend to increase from water activity around 0.35 up to 0.6 and then decreases. Meaning if there's too much water, free water molecule, Browning reaction stop. And then what else? Chlorophyll, anthocyanins, and then maybe this one is important, the stability isotherm. I think this one shows the average of all of these interaction. Okay, reduce stability, and then stability increases overall, even though there's a decrease of stability here, and then increase again as the water activity increases overall. So this is referred to stability of the entire food. I think it's referring to food stability as a function of water activity. So this is called stability isotherm. Okay, in this section we are going to look at the prediction of water activity for practical application in the food industry. So prediction of water activity level for practical application can be done using various, at least 3 ways during food preparation of dried, intermediate, and high moisture content foods. The first step, or the first way, not step, the first method is water can be removed by dehydration, evaporation, or concentration process. So we call it dehydration evaporation methods. The second method is addition of solutes. Okay, addition of solute. This is the method for predicting the water activity. So what happens if you add the solutes into your product, formulated product? Well, the impregnation of solute can be performed by moist infusion or dry infusion. Moist infusion basically means is soaking our formulated food or food pieces that we want to know the water activity in a water solute solution, meaning water containing solute solution of lower water activity, lower than our food water activity. So in theory, due to the role of diffusion, osmosis, the water will get in from the environment into our foods because of lower water activity, meaning less water. Let me just think. Okay, lower water activity, lower amount of water molecule. Actually water comes out, but that's what it said. Water comes out from our food pieces, so dehydrating our food, which is one method of preserving. And the less water activity in our food, the better. Okay, this is, I think, presumably due to for the purpose of dehydration. If we want to make less water activity for preservation, etc. The next one is dry infusion. So dry infusion involves mixing our food with solutes at a required proportion. So that depends on whether you want to increase the water activity or decrease the water activity. Okay, just maintain or add the amount of solutes accordingly. Okay, in order to control the water activity in our final formulated food. When water rich solid products such as fruit and vegetable, which is basically water rich, containing a lot of water, are subjected to moist or dry infusion, 3 things can happen. Number 1, water outflow from the product, from our food into the environment. Solute flow, meaning from the environment into our products, and outflow of the products on solutes. So this is how we control the water activity in our food, depending. If, for example, if we want to make our food more drier, then we want water to come out from our food. Okay, water outflow. So by understanding the principle of osmosis, etc., we can control the quality of the final quality of our final product. The third method is combining method 1 and method 2, meaning combining the dehydration, evaporation, etc. with the addition or removal of solute. So when the food pieces are infused with solutes and additive and then partially dried, this is mean we are using method number 3. The advantage obtained with this combination compared to the only drying to increase in the stability of the pigments, which is responsible for the color and also better texture. Whatever the procedure used to reduce water activity, it is necessary to know water activity moisture content relationship in the food. So using the moisture sorption graph. So this is the first method, dehydration, evaporation or concentration process. So basically, if you remove water molecule from your food become more concentrated. Okay, same thing if you evaporate, the food become more concentrated. Dehydration, evaporation, concentration process involve the removal of water molecule from the food in order to lower their water activity. During this process, water activity can be predicted. The level of water activity can be predicted using empirical or mechanistic model. We're not going to do the mechanistic model, this is more complicated. We can do this based on temperature, moisture content, and process parameters. For example, in drying process, using air drying or freeze drying or spray drying, empirical models such as Henderson equation or Page equation can be used to predict water activity based on drying times and temperature. Mechanistic model, however, may incorporate moisture diffusion kinetics, heat transfer, and phase equilibrium, therefore more complex, more calculation involved in order to predict water activity accurately. Predicting water activity during dehydration process is essential for controlling product quality, preventing microbial growth, as you saw from the previous lectures, and ensuring shelf stability. The second one is addition of solute and for moist infusion and dry infusion. So addition of solutes such as sugar, salts, or humectants can lower water activity in foods product through moist infusion or dry infusion process. In moist infusion, food is soaked in solution containing solutes, while in dry infusion, the solutes are added directly to the food matrix. So that's the difference between moist infusion and dry infusion. Moist involve of the solution, okay, containing solutes, and you know that the solute if the solute get into our food product, then we will have a lower or less water activity. Water activity prediction in moist infusion and dry infusion involve estimating the impact of solute concentration on water activity using empirical or semi-empirical models. We will try to do some exercise on that. However, for example, using Kosaraju and Pellet models are commonly used to predict water activity in food system with added solute based on solute concentration and temperatures. So we're not going to do Kosaraju and Pellet, but we will do the Henderson and what was it before? Henderson and Page equation. Understanding the relationship between solute concentration and water activity is therefore critical for optimizing infusion process and controlling product properties such as texture, flavor, and shelf life. The third method is combination of dehydration, evaporation, and addition of solute. So in here we're combining dehydration or evaporation process with addition of solute, which can offer synergistic benefits for lowering water activity in our food products. Okay. Water activity prediction in this combined process require integrating model for both dehydration, the first one here, and solute-solvent interaction. Mechanistic model that consider mass transfer, phenomena, solute diffusion, and thermodynamic properties can provide accurate prediction of water activity in this complex system. By combining dehydration and solute addition, manufacturers can tailor product formulation to achieve specific water activity level, desired water activity level, enhancing product stability and extending shelf life. Predicting water activity in combined process enable optimization of process parameters, formulation design, quality control measures in order to meet product specification and consumer preference. So this is the empirical model that was mentioned before. So empirical model basically mean it is based on experimental data and statistical analysis to predict the water activity in drying processes. They provide simplified relationship between drying time, temperature, and water activity, making them suitable for practical application. So the first equation that we will practice is Henderson equation. In the Henderson equation, it is commonly used to predict water activity during drying processes. It relates water activity to drying time, temperature, using empirical coefficient determined from experimental data in the past. So this is the formula for determining water activity using Henderson equation or Henderson methods. Okay, so basically the AWA sub W of saturation water activity, plus K1 here refer to empirical coefficients, okay, that is done by experiment in the past. Okay, so they know the empirical coefficient already, times the natural log of the ratio between temperature divided by temperature R, TR. So T here is drying temperature, the unit is Kelvin. We have to add 273.15 to the degree Celsius in order to get the Kelvin value. TR here is the temperature of saturated water activity. So for example here, a food manufacturer is drying fruit at constant temperature at 60 degree. The reference temperature is TR is 25 degree. Saturation water activity at reference temperature is 0.95. Given the empirical coefficient value is here, K1 to be 0.02, K2 is 0.05, K3 is 10. Calculate the water activity of the dried fruits after 6 hours of drying. So as you can see, we already know the empirical coefficient from experiments. So based on the temperatures and the temperature of drying, we can predict the water activity after certain hours of drying. So we proceed by converting the degree C into Kelvin. So 60 plus 273.15 become 333.15. Okay, and then reference temperature is 25, meaning 25 plus 273 become 298. Saturation water activity at reference temperature is 0.95. This is a reference saturation water activity which is available in the book, in the reference table. The drying time is 6 hours, and then our empirical coefficient that we have done based on our experiment are shown here, 0.02, 0.05 and 10. So plug this value into the Henderson formula here, and then we get saturation water activity 0.95, K1 coefficient 0.02, natural log of T is the drying temperature here, 333 at 60 degrees C, divided by 25 degree reference temperature, this is 298.15, plus K2 0.05 times T minus TR, meaning that drying temperature minus the reference divided by drying temperature plus coefficient 3. Yes, empirical coefficient of 3. Plug all this value, you should get water activity after 6 hours of drying to be 0.9573, which is still quite high, but maybe still good enough for this particular food products. Okay. So therefore the water activity of the dried fruits after 6 hours, after only 6 hours of drying at 60 degrees is approximately 0.9573. Let's do another one. This is for the page equation. The formula is this one. Okay, water activity is saturation water activity times the exponent of negative K, which is a rate constant, times the T over T to the power of 1 over N. N here is empirical constant. For example, a pharmaceutical company is drying a powdered medication at constant temperature of 40 degrees. The saturation water activity of the medication at this temperature is 0.85. The rate constant K for drying process is 0.02 per hour, and empirical constant N is 1.5. Calculate the water activity of the dried medication powder after 8 hours of drying. Again, summarize all the data that we have. 40 degree, convert into Kelvin, 313.15. Saturation water activity is provided to be 0.85, drying time 8 hours, rate constant 0.02, empirical constant 1.5. Using the page formula, we have 0.85, the saturation water activity, exponent to the of negative 0.02, the empirical coefficient, drying time is 8 hours, over 1 over N, which is N was the empirical constant. Proceed with your calculator. You should get water activity to be 0.7854 after 8 hours of drying at 40 degrees C. So as you can see, the application of this formula, empirical model like Henderson equation and Page equation, are widely used in food processing industries for predicting water activity during drying process. They enable manufacturers to optimize drying condition, control product quality, and ensure microbial safety in dried food products. So in conclusion, empirical model provide practical tools for predicting water activity in drying process based on drying time and temperature. By utilizing this model, manufacturers can optimize drying parameters and enhance product quality and stability. Theoretical and experimental study of water activity concept allow us to evaluate choice of method for preserving food. Quality and food safety depends on pH and water activity in food environment. Foods with water activity are perishable. Water activity, pH, temperature, and other parameters have direct impact on the growth of microorganisms. Therefore, water activity and pH are two of the most important parameters. Free water that is available to molds, yeast, and bacteria is responsible for their growth and even toxin production. Or it may participate in biochemical reaction, e.g. Maillard reaction, which might deteriorate texture, flavor, color, taste, nutritional value of the product, and its stability, and therefore its shelf-life time. Water activity has its most useful application in predicting the growth of bacteria, yeast, and molds. We don't want that, so we can control that by lowering water activity. For food that to have useful shelf life without relying on refrigerated storage, it is necessary to control either its acidity level, pH, or the level of water activity to be as low as possible, or a suitable combination of the two.